Have you ever been crushed by something someone said to you, not physically, just words, but those words echoed, they stayed, they shaped the way you looked at yourself, maybe even how you lived your life? It's time to change that, because the truth is, words only have power when we surrender ours. Today, let's talk about how to rise above, and finally stop letting words hurt us. We've all heard the saying, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me." But we all know that's a lie. Words do hurt, sometimes more than anything physical ever could. But have you ever paused to ask, why? Why can a sentence spoken in 5 seconds live rent free in our minds for 5 years? Why does a sarcastic remark, a cold dismissal, or a careless insult echo louder than applause? It's not the sound of the words, it's not even the person saying them, it's the meaning we assign. It's the moment we internalize it and give it permission to shape how we see ourselves. See, we're wired for connection. As human beings, we crave belonging. Thousands of years ago, being accepted by the group wasn't about comfort, it was about survival. So when we perceive rejection, especially through words, it doesn't feel like just a comment. It feels like a threat. That's why criticism, even when it's not true, feels real. Because on a subconscious level, our brain interprets it as danger. Now layer that with our own insecurities. We all have them. Flaws we try to hide, doubts we try to silence. And when someone's words hit close to those hidden places, it doesn't matter if the words are logical or fair. It hurts because it touches something we've already questioned about ourselves. But here's something most of us don't realize. Words don't carry weight on their own. They borrow weight from our beliefs. If someone calls you a failure and you know you're trying, growing, and evolving, you brush it off. But if you already secretly fear you're not good enough, that same word cuts like a knife. This is why 2 people can hear the exact same insult and only one walks away wounded. It's never just about the words. It's about what's already inside. When we lack clarity about who we are, when our sense of self is fragile or undefined, we become a blank canvas for others to write on. And they will, whether it's a teacher who underestimated you, a friend who betrayed you, or a stranger online. If you don't have a filter, everything gets in. Every careless opinion becomes truth. Every offhand remark becomes identity. So no, words don't hurt just because they're loud. They hurt when they align with our fear. They hurt when they fill in the blanks we haven't owned. And they hurt most when we've never taken the time to define ourselves, on our terms. It's easy to tell people, don't let it get to you. It sounds good, clean, simple. But what most don't realize is that the ability to let things bounce off of you doesn't come from strength alone. It comes from clarity. Clarity is often mistaken for confidence, but they're not the same. Confidence can be loud. Clarity is quiet. Confidence says, I'm sure of myself. Clarity says, I know myself. And that difference, it's everything, because when you don't truly know who you are, every opinion starts to matter. Every judgment feels personal. Every comment becomes a mirror you didn't ask for, and you start to shapeshift. You bend, mold, and twist yourself to fit whatever version of you people seem to prefer or expect. It's exhausting, but clarity changes that. When you're clear on your values, your purpose, your beliefs, you stop outsourcing your identity. You stop letting the world decide who you should be. You stop giving strangers the steering wheel to your self-worth. It's not about being perfect. It's about being rooted. Think about a tree in a storm. The wind blows, branches sway, but the tree doesn't fall, not because the storm is weak, but because the roots are deep. Clarity is your root system. Without it, even a gentle breeze can knock you down. And here's what people rarely tell you. Clarity doesn't come naturally. It's not something we're born with. It's something we build, deliberately. It starts with questions most people avoid. Who am I when no one's watching? What matters to me more than approval? What do I believe in, even if I stand alone in it? These aren't easy questions, but without them, you're vulnerable, not to physical harm, but to emotional erosion, a slow wearing away of your true self, one unchallenged opinion at a time. Because here's the thing, people will always have something to say. They'll question your choices, they'll doubt your path, they'll mock your dreams, not because they know you, but because they don't. And that's why clarity matters so much. When you know who you are, you stop trying to prove it. You stop chasing validation and start protecting your peace. You stop feeling the need to defend yourself against every misunderstanding, every criticism, every look that lingers too long. You realize that not every voice deserves a reaction. Not every comment needs an answer, and not every opinion should enter your space. Because when you're clear, you become unshakable. Not because the world is kind, but because you're anchored. We spend so much of our lives listening to teachers, to parents, to bosses, to critics, to friends who mean well and strangers who don't, and somewhere along the way, in the middle of all that noise, we forget to listen to ourselves. We underestimate the power of our own voice, not the one others hear, but the one only we do, the quiet one, the one that whispers at night when the lights are off, the one that speaks when we're alone, undistracted, unfiltered. And what's wild is, that voice, it's the one shaping us the most, not what the world says about us, but what we say to ourselves. Most people don't realize they've been carrying around an inner narrator their entire lives. And for many, that narrator isn't kind, it's not encouraging, it doesn't motivate, it judges, it compares, it doubts. It repeats words that were never theirs to begin with, just echoes of things heard long ago but never unlearned. You're not enough, you always mess it up, you don't have what it takes, you're a burden, you're too much, or you're not enough. Those words don't come out of nowhere, they're collected, absorbed, internalized. From a harsh teacher, a distant parent, a careless partner, and over time we stop needing their voice, because we've made it our own. This is why external insults hurt less than internal narratives, because even when people stop talking, we keep the conversation going, we rehearse our fears, we repeat our self-judgments, we play mental reruns of every mistake, every awkward moment, every time we didn't measure up. But here's what makes it even harder: we believe that being harsh on ourselves is what drives growth. We confuse self-criticism with self-improvement, as if shame is a strategy, as if beating ourselves down is how we rise, but the truth is, the words we speak to ourselves become the reality we live in. They shape our confidence, our relationships, our willingness to try. Because if the voice in your head is always telling you you're not worthy, how can you ever fully show up in the world? How can you take a risk, chase a dream, build a life, when the loudest voice in your ear is working against you? And maybe that's the hardest part of growth, realizing that no one has been holding you back more than you. Not because you wanted to, but because you never questioned the script. You never rewrote the narrative. You never gave yourself permission to speak to yourself with the same compassion you offer others. And yet, that's where everything shifts, not when the world changes, but when the inner dialogue does. Not when the noise outside goes silent, but when the noise inside learns a new language, one rooted in truth. Not empty positivity, but earned belief, not flattery, but deep understanding, because the most transformative voice in your life won't come from a stage, a mentor, or even someone you love. It'll come from within, from the part of you that remembers who you are even when the world forgets. There's this idea we grow up with, that being open, kind, and approachable means making room for everyone, that we should always be available. Always listen, always take every opinion seriously, that giving people a seat at your table is the polite, noble, even necessary thing to do. But here's the truth most people don't say out loud. Not everyone deserves a seat at your table. And that's not arrogance, that's not pride, that's boundaries. See, your table represents more than just who you let into your physical space. It's who you allow to speak into your life, to shape your beliefs, to influence your self-worth, to color how you see yourself and your future. And if you're not intentional, if you don't choose who sits there, someone else will choose for you. Because people are eager to pull up a chair. They'll offer their opinion like it's fact. They'll hand out judgment like it's wisdom. They'll disguise jealousy as advice and fear as concern. And if you're not paying attention, you'll start confusing their voice for your own inner compass. You'll begin living someone else's version of your life, making decisions based on their fears, shrinking yourself to fit their comfort, holding back, not because you lack potential, but because someone at your table told you to be realistic. But here's something we all need to learn, often the hard way. Not every voice comes from a place of love, and even those that do aren't always right. There are people who project their insecurities onto you, people who haven't healed, so they don't want to see you whole, people who see your courage and call it foolish, not because it is, but because it reminds them of what they're not doing. And sometimes the most damaging voices come from people who care, people who love you, but love you through the lens of their own limits, and if you're not careful, you'll start mistaking fear for protection. That's why boundaries matter. That's why your table shouldn't be open seating, because when everyone has access, you dilute your clarity. You start managing people's expectations instead of honoring your truth. You start performing instead of living. You stop listening to yourself, because everyone else is too loud. Now, this doesn't mean you close yourself off to feedback. Growth requires perspective. But feedback only has value when it comes from someone who sees you, not just someone who thinks they know you. From someone who's invested in your becoming, not just your obedience. From someone who challenges you to rise, not someone who's waiting for you to fall. Because your table, your mental and emotional space is sacred, and the energy you allow in it will either build you up or break you down. It'll either water your growth or drain your strength. It'll either echo your values or distract you from them. So the real question isn't who wants to sit with me. It's who has earned the right to be here. Who's shown consistency, not just charisma. Who brings truth wrapped in kindness, not criticism wrapped in ego. Who sits with you when you're silent, not just when you're shining. There's a moment, small, invisible, often missed, between what happens to us and what we do next. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. But that moment holds all the power, because in that space lives the choice. Do I react, or do I respond? Most people live their lives in reaction mode. Something happens, someone says something, and boom, reaction. Fast, emotional, unfiltered, it's automatic, it's impulsive, it feels justified, and for a moment it even feels right. But here's the danger of reacting. It's not guided by values. It's driven by emotion. It doesn't ask, who do I want to be in this moment? It just asks, how do I protect myself right now? And there's nothing wrong with emotion. Anger, sadness, fear. They're all real, valid, human. But when we let them steer the wheel, we end up somewhere we didn't mean to go. We say things we can't take back. We make decisions we later regret. We burn bridges we may one day need to cross again. Reaction feels like strength in the moment, but often, it's just our fear in a louder costume. Response, on the other hand, is a different kind of power. It's quieter, slower. It doesn't scream, it thinks. It asks, what outcome do I want here? What would my future self thank me for? Is this really about me, or is it about them? To respond means to pause. To create space between the trigger and the decision. It means recognizing that just because someone else lost control doesn't mean you have to. It means remembering that you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to explain yourself to every critic. You don't have to prove your worth to people who have already made up their mind. It's not easy, because response requires restraint. It demands awareness, and it asks you to rise above your ego, which is always hungry for defense, for justice, for the last word. But here's the truth: you don't win by reacting faster. You win by choosing smarter. When you respond, you shift the focus from the external to the internal. You stop letting other people's words write your narrative. You stop handing your peace over like it's disposable. You stop being controlled by whatever or whoever shows up to poke your insecurities. Because most of what's thrown at you isn't personal. It's projection. People lash out because they're hurting, frustrated, unseen, insecure. And if you take it all in, if you absorb it like it was meant for you, you'll carry burdens that were never yours to begin with. But when you choose to respond, you filter it. You ask, does this deserve my energy? Is this aligned with who I'm trying to become? You create a buffer, a kind of inner firewall that protects your peace without closing off your heart. And the more you practice that, the more you realize you don't have to match energy, you don't have to mirror chaos, you don't have to return fire with fire, because the highest form of discipline isn't silence, it's intentionality. And every time you choose response over reaction, you take one step closer to emotional freedom. We spend so much of our lives trying to protect ourselves from the outside. We armor up against criticism. We flinch at judgment. We shrink under harsh words. But the truth is, our greatest strength has never come from silencing the world. It's come from understanding ourselves. When you truly understand why words hurt, when you develop clarity about who you are, when the voice in your head finally becomes your ally instead of your enemy, when you no longer hand out seats at your table to people who haven't earned them, and when you choose to respond instead of react, that's when everything begins to shift, not because the world changes, not because people suddenly become kinder or quieter, but because you have changed. You've stopped letting your identity be shaped by noise. You've started rising, not above people, but above the patterns that once held you down. You stop being a prisoner to words, and you start becoming the author of your own. So rise above, not to escape the world, but to lead yourself through it with clarity, with grace, and with the quiet kind of strength that doesn't need to shout, because you were never too weak. You were just too distracted by voices that were never yours to carry. And now you know better.